In this video, I'm going to try and tell you everything you need to know to make money with Bitcoin. I have been involved with Bitcoin now for about 2 to 3 years, and that's when I've really gotten into Bitcoin. But I've really been interested in Bitcoin for probably 8 years, 8+ years. So for the last 3 years, I've been really researching it and really trying to find out what is important to make money with it, because it is really overcomplicated in a lot of cases where I see online where people are talking about Bitcoin and they're talking about things that don't really matter for a normal person who's trying to make money with it. You don't need to be worried about the things that are overcomplicated with it. It's just a case of learning a few things, and then you can use that over and over again to continue to make money. So what I would say, okay, the first thing that I learned is about the 4-year cycle. The 4-year cycle is a process where the price will go up in price, generally in the direction of upwards price over 3 years. It will do that for 3 years. And on a weekly basis and on a monthly basis, the price will be very volatile. It'll be going up and down. The price will be all over the place if you zoom into the price and you are looking at it over a short time frame. But if you look at the price over a longer time frame and you zoom out, you will see that the price goes up in price for 3 years. It falls for 1 year. That is the main thing that you need to understand. And what's important is knowing where to find the 4-year cycle. Where you find the 4-year cycle is if you look at the Bitcoin halving. What the Bitcoin halving is where the amount of Bitcoin that is released to the market on a daily basis is cut in half. Now that might seem a little bit complicated, but to break it down into like a process that doesn't seem complicated, what happens is people all over the world are using computers, let's just say, to mine Bitcoin, to create new Bitcoin. And they are continuing to do that every day. And then at one time, every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that's getting released to the market on a daily basis by all of these miners, let's call them, is cut in half. So on one day, there's a certain number of new Bitcoin being mined every day. And then the following day, that is half. So that happens once every 4 years. And that is probably one of the most overlooked things when it comes to making money with Bitcoin, because if you know where the Bitcoin halving is, it puts you in a great place to see, okay, so the price is going to go up into the halving, and then after the halving, the price will see a supply shock, and then you can time it from when the price turns around after the previous cycle before the halving, if you go 3 years on from that point. So at the previous halving, you will see the price go downwards for 1 year. And then at the point where it turns around and the price starts going up again into the next halving, 3 years from that point is when you will see a peak of Bitcoin. Usually it's around Christmas. It's always around Christmas. So Christmas 2013 was a peak. Christmas 2017 was a peak. And then Christmas 2021 was also a peak. Now, I mean roughly around Christmas. I don't mean exactly like Christmas Day. It's around the end of the year time you usually see a peak of Bitcoin. Now that's roughly, I mean that roughly. But if you are timing it 3 years, it's usually roughly that. So, but what I have spoken about in the other videos that I posted is that you don't need to know exactly the day of when Bitcoin is going to hit its peak, because if you buy Bitcoin consistently when Bitcoin is at a low price point in a time frame where Bitcoin is roughly, you know, it's at a low point for the cycle. If you consistently buy Bitcoin throughout that time frame and then you wait to where Bitcoin is at a much higher price point after, you know, the 3-year time frame, or you can wait less, that's up to you. You don't have to wait the full 3 years. If you sell some Bitcoin then at the end of that 3 years, you're going to make a lot of money. You don't have to do anything exactly. You just have to follow the process and be generally directionally correct, and you're going to make a lot of money. That's why I say there's no reason for you not to be making money with Bitcoin if you just understand the 4 year cycle. Once I saw that I had the 4 year cycle, I realized this is so simple. It is so straightforward. How does everyone not see this? That's, I think, the first question that I asked. How does everyone not see this? Because if you just track the price of Bitcoin over a time frame, you can see what it's doing. And why it does that is because it is playing to what the market is doing, and also supply and demand. Like the market tied into supply and demand will give you a sort of a formula that you can use to predict what the next cycle is going to do. And it has happened every single time. So I was annoyed that I didn't realize this a couple of years before I did. But then when I did realize it, I said, I'm just going to use this forever. And I've been using it for the last 3 years, and it has been crazy at how obvious it is now that I understand it. Every day I've just been like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. This is how it works. And it's been totally obvious to me. And I've wondered why does everyone not understand this? I think everyone doesn't understand this because they're too busy to take the time to look into it, or they don't, like, I guess you have to be involved with cryptocurrency to actually see that there is a 4 year cycle. And it sort of relates to altcoins as well. So if you are involved in altcoins, you might see the 4 year cycle as well, but not as much as the 4 year cycle plays into how Bitcoin works. Altcoins do not go up for 3 years and then fall in price for 1 year as Bitcoin does. They're very unpredictable. That's why I just stay away from altcoins. I don't recommend even being involved in any altcoins because you're just gambling. And I think that might be a reason why they're so popular with some people who are very new to cryptocurrency, and because they seem like it's easy. They seem not so much that it's easy, it seems like it's quick. And obviously, everyone wants things quick. They want it now, they want it right now in 1 hour. They want to be, 100x their money. And they think if they put their money into all coins, that they're going to 100x their money in a few hours. And that's just not going to happen, because the whole reason, I think, why do you think these altcoins promote their coins so much, or their tokens? Because they created them and they want you to buy them because it's like a revenue stream for them. They just need the money that you are spending on the token that they've created. That's going to them in one way or another if they've created that altcoin. So I would recommend just staying away from all of the altcoins. They're not worth it because you're just gambling with the money, and you can't see what's going to happen. You don't have a predictable 4 year cycle like you do with Bitcoin. So to get back to the main point, how do you make money with Bitcoin? You understand the 4 year cycle. You understand the Bitcoin halving. When does that happen and what is the process around it? Then you look at, how does a Bitcoin transaction work? Because you need to understand how a Bitcoin transaction works. I figured out how a Bitcoin transaction works because I had been using the applications to do Bitcoin transactions. And then when I realized, oh yeah, this is fine, this is how it works, I just read some books on it then afterwards, and I got all the real details of how it works. But if you just have a rough idea, you can go ahead and use the Bitcoin network to do what you need to. And you don't need to be a technical genius. You just need to have a rough idea. I think too many people get caught up in the fact that Bitcoin is highly technical. And I would say it can be highly technical, but you don't need to understand everything. And I heard someone who is very prominent in the Bitcoin industry before say that they are not even an expert in it. And you might say, if they're not an expert in it, then how can you be an expert in it? You don't need to be. The reason they said that is because they said that there is there are so many new things happening in the Bitcoin space every day that it's impossible to keep up with it. So you don't need to be following it all every day. You just need to understand the basic concepts of how the cycle works, how a transaction works, and how to understand how to not get caught up in noise as well as a big thing. that could possibly derail your whole system if you are understanding the 4 year cycle and then someone says something about Bitcoin and you just get totally thrown off. If you get totally thrown off, you are going to mess up your whole system. So don't worry about noise, because noise could be in the form of social media or a news post or anything like that. It just doesn't matter. I realized that I didn't need to be involving myself in this news that is happening on Bitcoin every single day, because the things that are most important to you about Bitcoin are not going to change on a daily basis. The fact that there is 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin is not going to change tomorrow if you don't look at the Bitcoin news that is being posted on social media every single day. I would say it's more of an entertainment thing to be following what's happening on Bitcoin on a daily basis. You just need to know what Satoshi Nakamoto did when he created Bitcoin. And again, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know the basics. If someone told me that I could just learn the basics in Bitcoin a couple of years before I started researching it, it would have sped up the process so much for me, because I could have gone ahead and read the books and listened to the podcasts that were actually explaining Bitcoin to me. And then I could have just moved forward with my process and not spend all this time looking at all the coins and looking at things that just don't matter. Research the 4 year cycle, a Bitcoin transaction, and the Bitcoin halving. Use the Bitcoin halving to decide what you're going to do, where your main purchases are going to be. Are they going to be a long ways before the Bitcoin halving or after? It's going to make sense to make purchases before the Bitcoin halving, because usually after the halving, about 6 months afterwards, you see a strong supply shock. And that's happened every single time for every Bitcoin halving. The last halving was April 2024. So generally you do see a supply shock after each halving. Like in 2013, there was a supply shock, 2017, and then 2021. So we will see how this plays out. You can use the Bitcoin halving to judge what's going to happen for the 4 year cycle. And that's how I got going with Bitcoin.